My daughter-in-law moved into my house and started treating me like I was already gone. She changed up all my routines, took over my home, and even decided what I was allowed to do. And my son. He didn't say a word. So I stayed quiet too. And in less than 3 weeks, I took my house back one step at a time. The money, the internet, the access, everything. They thought I was weak. They had no idea that I controlled everything they depended on. The living room looks so much more modern without those old lace doilies. Evelyn, my daughter-in-law Brooke, said as she set a sleek concrete gray vase on the big heirloom table that had belonged to my late husband. I sat at the kitchen table watching silently while she rearranged my home piece by piece like I'd already been shipped off to some anonymous nursing home. My son Nathan just stared at his phone and shoveled cereal into his mouth. Ever since they'd moved in temporarily 3 months ago, supposedly to save for a down payment on their own place, my house didn't feel like mine anymore. Brooke had started policing my grocery runs, calling my decorations junk, and dictating the entire rhythm of my days. I used to love the saying that your own hearth is worth its weight in gold. But lately, it felt like my kitchen belonged only to Brooke and her endless demands. I took a sip from my favorite old mug. The coffee was stone cold. Brooke had programmed the coffee maker to a digital timer that had zero respect for my natural body clock. She claimed it saved a ton on electricity under some new energy rules. I've got a solid piano lesson scheduled for the kids tomorrow. She went on, barely glancing my way. You'll need to pick them up from school at 2 sharp and take them straight to class. We won't be back till around 9. We're checking out kitchen showrooms after work. It wasn't a request. It was a straight-up order. Nathan stayed glued to his screen, avoiding my eyes like none of this was his problem. I felt this calm, almost meditative beat in my temples. It wasn't hot anger, just a crystal-clear, ice-cold realization. I stood up, slowly picked up that ugly vase, and set it back in the dim hallway with a solid clack. Tomorrow at 2, I've got my own non-negotiable appointment at the local garden center. I said, my voice as steady as a quiet lake before a storm. Brooke froze, one eyebrow raised. But who's going to watch the kids? That won't work, Evelyn. I didn't answer. I turned, walked to my room, and locked the door behind me. It was a small step, but it marked the end of me playing the unpaid patient servant. I pulled out my old household notebook and started crunching the numbers methodically. The next morning, the kitchen looked like a battlefield, spilled oat milk cartons, sticky spoons, and breadcrumbs all over the nice hardwood floors. In the old days, I would have grabbed a rag right away to restore the order I cared so much about. Today, I just made myself a cup of tea, ignored the mess, and sat with the newspaper at the one clean spot by the window. Brooke rushed in, car keys already in hand. Why isn't breakfast ready? And didn't you iron Nathan's shirts? He's got an important meeting today. I looked up slowly over the top of my reading glasses. Starting today, I'm only washing my own clothes, Brooke. And I finished my breakfast an hour ago, I said, matter-of-factly. Nathan walked in, looking nervous, his tie all wrinkled. Mom, come on. We had an understanding. We help a little around the house, and you handle the logistics so we can save efficiently. I folded the newspaper neatly. I went over the household expenses and utility bills from the last few months. I explained. That $200 you transfer each month as your contribution barely covers the heating for your long daily showers at today's rates. Starting the 1st of next month, I expect a fair market rate share of the bills and weekly groceries. Brooke let out a sharp, disbelieving laugh. We're family, Evelyn. Are you seriously trying to nickel and dime your own kids in your own house? I looked her straight in the eye, unblinking. No. I just want the economic reality respected. If you want to live like you're in a hotel, you'll need to pay hotel prices. When they stormed out, slamming the door behind them, I headed straight to the basement. I found the heating valves for the upstairs and adjusted them to a sensible, energy-saving 68 degrees. It was still within the rules, but it wasn't the tropical heat they'd been enjoying on my dime anymore. The era of endless free comfort was officially over. For the first time in months, I felt like the rightful owner of my own life again. In most American homes, the internet is the invisible lifeline, especially for Nathan, who works almost entirely from home, and for Brooke, who's constantly ordering new designer outfits online. I'm the only official account holder. My name is on the monthly bill. On the third day after our chilly kitchen talk, I changed the Wi-Fi password early that morning and disabled all the guest access on the router. It took less than 10 minutes for Nathan to knock on my bedroom door. He looked pale and stressed. "Mom, the internet's down. I got kicked out of a video call." "Did you restart the router? The internet's working perfectly, Nathan," I said calmly while reading a novel. "But since you both thought my new rules were too strict and unfriendly, I figured you'd want to set up your own independent service. That usually takes 3 to 6 weeks around here if you're lucky." Brooke appeared behind him, her face twisted with anger. "You can't do this. Nathan will lose his job if he can't work online. This is straight-up sabotage." I lowered the book and looked at her steadily. "He can use the Wi-Fi anytime once the new fair agreement on sharing the household costs is signed and sitting on this table. This is purely a business necessity. Oh, and by the way, Brooke, those 3 big packages that arrived for you this morning, I refused delivery. I'm not running a free package drop anymore, sitting around all day waiting for the driver while you're out." Brooke didn't scream this time. She just stared at me with pure hatred, the kind that would have cut deep before. Today, it rolled right off me. She was starting to realize I wasn't afraid of her bad moods or her dramatic silences anymore. The quiet that settled over the house after they stormed upstairs felt absolutely priceless. I knew the next move would be using the grandkids as emotional leverage. I was ready for it. I'd learned their manipulative tricks all too well by now. I stayed alert, but deep down, I was completely calm. "Grandma, why won't you play with us anymore?" "Mom says you're being mean and you took away the internet," little Caleb said the next afternoon, his eyes sad. It was the oldest, dirtiest trick in the book, using kids as human shields in an adult fight. Brooke sat in the background in the dining room, arms crossed, watching with a provocative, triumphant little smile. I took a deep breath, knelt down to Caleb's level, and gently brushed his hair to reassure him. "Grandma's not mean at all, sweetheart. Grandma's just really busy right now getting her own life back in order. We can go into town together this Saturday and get a big ice cream if your parents drop you off here in the living room at 10 sharp and get you ready for the outing." Brooke jumped in immediately, her voice sharp and cutting. "We don't have time to get the kids ready on Saturday. We already planned for you to watch both of them all day, so Nathan and I can look at model homes in the suburbs without rushing. You're home anyway, Evelyn. You can't just ignore them." I stood up slowly, my knees not even creaking this time. I felt strangely light. Good luck with the house hunting. But just because I live in the same house doesn't mean I'm on call 24/7. I signed up for a pottery class at the community center. It starts this Saturday, and I'll be leaving the house by 9. The disappointment and rising panic on Brooke's face was almost tangible. She'd been counting on my deep love for the grandkids to break my resolve as long as we were all under one roof. But I knew this. I wasn't setting a good example for them if I let myself be treated like unpaid household help. That evening, I cooked myself a nice ribeye steak with fresh asparagus. Just for me. The delicious smell filled the whole house, while Nathan and Brooke ate dry sandwiches in silence upstairs in their cluttered room. They'd clearly forgotten that I was the one who had always strategically planned and paid for the big weekly grocery runs. I savored every bite of my hard-won freedom. In a well-run American home, some things are almost sacred, like keeping the entryway neat and organized. Brooke had made a habit of scattering her endless designer shoes, gym bags, and jackets all over the foyer, while my own things got shoved into a dark, dusty corner behind the basement door. It looked like a messy college apartment. Friday morning, I rented a small storage unit at a professional place in the next town over for a modest fee. I wanted my space back without damaging their belongings or giving them any legal opening. When they got home late that afternoon, they found a spotless, almost empty hallway. Everything was gone. Where's our stuff? Where's my expensive coat and my workout gear? Brooke demanded, standing there stunned. It was in the way, and creating a tripping hazard, I answered calmly while watering the orchids on the windowsill. I documented everything carefully, took individual photos, and stored it all safely. Here's the business card and the address of the unit. I paid the first month as a parting gift. Starting next month, it's on you. Nathan stammered something about a total overreaction and how we could have talked about it. I cut him off right away. This house has clear boundaries, Nathan. I invited you to stay here for a while, but I didn't give you permission to take over the entire place. Since you obviously can't fit all your things in your own room, I created external space for you. Brooke was furious and even threatened consequences. I just smiled mildly, completely unfazed. I'm sure you'll find everything safe and sound. It's well guarded and insured. That night, I heard them whispering upstairs for hours. They were probably plotting ways to intimidate me. They thought I had no more cards left to play. They badly underestimated my decades of experience running this family. Order had been restored. The following Monday, I sat at the kitchen table with my detailed bank statements. For years, I'd been sending Nathan a monthly help payment, a holdover from his college days that I'd never stopped out of habit and misplaced motherly worry. It was a solid $400 a month. I logged into my online banking and canceled the automatic transfer with one decisive click. When the first day of the new month rolled around, my phone rang right around lunchtime. Nathan sounded nervous and unsure. Mom, the bank just notified me. The recurring transfer was stopped. Was there a glitch with your account? No technical problem, Nathan, I said, while watching the birds in the garden. I canceled it myself. You're both working full-time now, and you've been living here almost rent-free for months. I need that money for my own retirement and my personal plans. I'm thinking of taking a 6-week trip to Florida this winter to escape the cold up here. The silence on the other end was so long I thought the call had dropped. But we had that money built into our budget for the new house. We need every dollar for the down payment, or the bank won't approve the loan. I answered with a gentleness that almost hurt. Then maybe it's time to rethink your priorities and your ongoing expenses. Those 2 fancy leased cars, for example, they're eating up a fortune. I can't keep funding your lifestyle while I hold back on mine. I hung up before he could reply. I didn't feel bad or guilty. For the first time since my husband passed, I felt completely independent. Brooke tried punishing me with icy silence that evening, but I could see her control slipping away. Without my financial boost and my daily help, their dream of a fancy new home was suddenly looking shaky and unrealistic. Reality was knocking, and they weren't ready. But I was. I prepared for the next necessary step. I knew the next move had to be bold to settle things in the house once and for all. I called my old high school friend Linda. She'd been desperately looking for a small place since her tough divorce. Come stay with me for a few months, I suggested. I've got a beautiful guest room. At least it will be once my kids officially move out. Linda could stay with her sister for 2 more weeks before joining me. Brooke overheard the call from the hallway. I'd left the door cracked on purpose. She stormed into the kitchen like a whirlwind. You're letting some stranger move in. This is our floor. It's my house, Brooke, and my name is on the deed. I reminded her with rock-solid calm. And Linda isn't a stranger. She's been my closest friend for 40 years. She'll start paying fair rent next month, which will help me cover the rising property taxes. Since you two still refuse to agree to a fair written contribution, I had to make a purely financial decision. Brooke's face turned deep red with rage. We're not leaving. You can't just put us out on the street. That's not even easy legally. I nodded slowly and firmly. No one's talking about the street, Brooke. But the room you're using as your home office will be Linda's private living space, starting the week after next. I've already checked the local requirements and prepared the paperwork. Nathan stood in the doorway looking helpless and smaller than usual. For the first time, I saw a spark of respect in his eyes, or maybe it was just raw fear of what my words meant. He knew instinctively I wasn't backing down this time. I had everything under control and was following the rules to the letter. My plan was airtight. There's an unwritten rule in any home: whoever controls the keys holds the real power over the space. I discovered by chance that Brooke had secretly made 2 copies of my front door key. She'd given them to her best friend and her mom so they could drop by any time. One Tuesday afternoon, I called a professional locksmith and had a new high-security lock installed to regain control over access to my private space and keep out unwanted guests. When they got home around 6 p.m., I heard the frantic scratching of the old key in the new cylinder, followed by curses and then a long ring of the doorbell. I opened the door just a crack, secured by the chain. The key doesn't work. "What is this now?" Evelyn Brooke screamed hysterically. "That's right," I said evenly. "I had the lock changed this morning. There were security concerns with unauthorized people having access to my house." I handed Nathan a single new key through the gap. "This one's yours, Nathan. Since you're officially listed here, you of course have access." Then I looked Brooke straight in the eye. "Brooke, you're only here as a guest, not a co-owner. Your friends and family no longer have entry without my explicit permission. If you can't accept that, you'll need to find other arrangements." Nathan stood there silently. He didn't dare argue. He could see the new resolve in my eyes. Brooke trembled with bottled-up fury, but finally stepped back. She had finally understood that the time when she called the shots in this house was over. I was back in charge, and the new lock was visible proof of my authority. There were no more arguments that evening. I closed the door and felt secure. The overall mood in the house now felt like a freezing, dark January morning. Strangely, I enjoyed the new, cool quiet. There were no more fake pleasantries. Nathan and Brooke started seriously scanning the local classifieds every evening this time for actual rental apartments they could afford on their own salaries. One late night, Nathan sat alone in the kitchen with a glass of water. He looked completely worn out and disillusioned. "Mom, why are you doing all this to us? We just wanted to be a family under one roof." I sat down across from him at the table. I'd finally cleared of Brooke's decorations. "Nathan, a healthy family runs on mutual respect and equal footing, not on one person being emotionally and financially taken advantage of. You stood by for months while Brooke slowly pushed me out of my own space. You stayed silent when she insulted my furniture, criticized my cooking, and scheduled my free time without asking." He lowered his head and stared at his hands. "It was just easier not to say anything and avoid fighting with her." "Easier for you, Nathan," I replied firmly. "But it was costing me dearly on the inside. I love you as my son, but I will never again sacrifice my self-worth and my peace for your short-term convenience." It was the most honest, deepest conversation we'd had in years. He finally understood that my sudden firmness wasn't cruelty, it was pure self-defense, so I wouldn't disappear in my own home. He promised me he'd have a serious talk with Brooke, but deep down, I knew talk alone wouldn't fix this stuck situation anymore. I needed a firm, written move-out date to breathe again. I stayed insistent on clarity and consequences. The path forward was now clear and irreversible. 3 weeks later, a big rented moving truck actually sat in my driveway. There were no big, dramatic farewell scenes, but the atmosphere felt strangely peaceful and respectful. Brooke had grown very quiet in the final days, almost humbled once she painfully realized none of her manipulations worked on me anymore. They'd found a small, bright apartment on the edge of town that fit their budget exactly. As they headed out, I handed Nathan a small, heavy package. "What's this going away gift?" he asked, surprised and a little touched. "It's a really good beginner's cookbook and a laminated cleaning schedule for a 4-bedroom place." I said, with a small, genuine smile. It's time, Nathan, for you two to build your own life and learn what it means to take responsibility for a household. When the truck finally turned the corner and disappeared from view, I took the deepest, freest breath I'd had in months. The silence that now filled the house wasn't lonely or empty. It was full of new possibilities and deep inner peace. It felt incredibly liberating. I went into the old guest room, threw the windows wide open, and let the fresh, cool spring air rush in to chase away the scent of the past few months for good. Linda would be moving in with her first boxes next Monday. We'd already made plans over the phone the night before to redesign the garden together with plenty of room for my beloved roses and zero room for outside demands or disrespect. I poured myself a cup of coffee. This time it was steaming hot, exactly the way I like it. I settled into my old, comfortable armchair, put my feet up, and looked out at the garden with deep satisfaction. I had my house back, my pride, and my priceless peace, and the best part was knowing I'd done it all on my own. No lawyers, no shouting matches, just the steady power of my own unshakable boundaries. It was truly a good day for a fresh start. Don't mistake silence for weakness. Sometimes it's the moment when someone quietly puts everything back where it belongs.